Welcome to BuildingsOne video series. This video provides facilities managers practical guidance in planning and conducting a fire and evacuation drill. The primary purpose of a building fire drill is to ensure building occupants know how to respond to a fire incident and other building emergencies with an emphasis on evacuation procedures. Periodic fire drills and associated training with participation from the emergency response team, fire wardens, and building occupants is a code-required life safety training obligation. The facility fire and evacuation drill can be accomplished through 5 phases: preparation and communication, a pre-fire drill life safety training seminar, the fire and evacuation drill event, evaluation and debrief, and documentation. Training tenants in emergency preparedness and building evacuation is an essential obligation of the facility's life safety program. The local authority having jurisdiction, AHJ, typically the city or county fire department, establish fire and evacuation drill frequency at commercial buildings within their district. The building owner's oversight of fire and evacuation drills is a legal obligation with specific criteria subject to location and facility use. One fire department will order full evacuation for a specific size and type building, while a fire department in another locality will enforce partial evacuation. For example, fire and evacuation drill requirements at an office building is typically 2 times per year, whereas frequency at a child care facility might be monthly. The building's life safety director should confirm fire and evacuation drill requirements by reviewing the fire safety section of the AHJ government website and follow up with the fire department. Additional codes, regulations, and resources may be referenced through National Fire Protection Association. Fire alarm system operation and evacuation procedures are also specific to each building's location, size, and use and must be approved by the AHJ. A fire and evacuation drill requires organized planning and considerable effort, in particular at larger facilities. Key to a successful fire and evacuation drill is commitment from the building's emergency response team and tenant fire warden organization. Participation ensures the emergency response organization and occupants are well trained and respond effectively to a fire incident and other building emergencies. The building life safety director position should be designated in writing and held by an experienced facility owner-manager representative. The facility manager, operations manager, or security director are best suited in this essential role. In select jurisdictions, for example, New York City, appointing a fire and life safety director as a primary responsibility is a city code requirement. The fire and evacuation drill preparation and communication phase is time-intensive and provides a foundation for a successful fire drill event. The subsequent 4 phases are very much dependent upon this planning phase. The preparation and communication phase begins several months prior to the fire and evacuation drill itself. During the annual planning and budget cycle, elements of this phase can occur up to a year prior to the fire and evacuation drill. It is recommended preparation starts in earnest 6 to 8 weeks prior to the fire and evacuation drill. While the building's fire and evacuation drill is a legal obligation requiring tenant participation, selecting a date accommodating to tenants will reinforce involvement. The life safety director will consider major tenant business conflicts, for example, avoiding a planned fire drill during final weeks of an accounting firm's annual tax season. Providing a few options and a makeup date will also ensure participation if a conflict occurs, such as a weather emergency. Early elements of the preparation and communication phase include establishing the fire and evacuation drill date and organizing participation from building tenants and the fire department. When the event is planned, emergency organization lists should be updated, fire and evacuation drill supplies ordered, and training curriculum developed. Building fire alarm systems should be retested for full functionality and egress routes and assembly areas inspected for compliance. Inspection and pre-testing will incorporate the building fire panel and associated fire alarm devices, public address system, exit lights, egress routes, automatic fire door closure devices, and other life safety systems and components. The building's life safety and fire systems should be maintained to function as designed. However, a close review prior to a building fire and evacuation drill will ensure 100% system functionality and effective training for the entire occupancy participating in the event. Pre-inspection and testing is particularly important in larger properties having an abundance of fire alarm system devices and more complex high-rise evacuation system procedures. For example, large high-rise properties incorporating a fire evacuation procedure relocating occupants from the fire incident floor and adjacent floors above and below require specific fire alarm activation and sequencing to test and practice this procedure. Within the context of overall building operations, an opportune time to schedule a fire and evacuation drill might be several weeks after regularly scheduled fire system contractor maintenance and testing. Formal training of the building's emergency response and tenant fire warden teams is essential and is best conducted within 1 week of the fire and evacuation drill date. All members of the building emergency response team, including facility management, operations, security, and tenant fire wardens, participate in the training session with attendance documented and retained as a permanent building record. The emergency response team might consider an unannounced fire drill at a facility when occupants have developed significant tenure, experience, and confidence. The tenant's response to a false fire alarm incident will also reveal their preparation to an actual fire and evacuation scenario. A PowerPoint training seminar with handouts pertaining to fire and evacuation related emergencies should be provided to participants. Training will include fire warden and emergency response team roles and responsibilities, fire prevention practices, basic fire alarm system operation, reporting a fire incident, the building's fire alarm evacuation signal, automated alert and evacuation messaging and evacuation procedures. The training seminar is an opportune time to review other building emergency preparedness and response procedures. Life safety consulting firms having expertise in emergency preparedness can lead or support the training program at very large facilities having considerable occupancy. In addition to the seminar, a walkthrough and review of emergency stairwell locations and egress routes, exit lights, fire alarm pull station devices, speaker strobe annunciators, and other life safety related systems offers a hands-on instructional approach. A recorded life safety webinar can supplement the seminar presentation during the fire drill training phase and can also be posted on a website for access as needed. A building's specific evacuation procedures typically follow one of two evacuation protocol as promulgated by the AHJ: selective or staged evacuation, or entire building occupancy evacuation. Very tall high-rise buildings might also incorporate emergency refuge practice, where occupants relocate several floors below the incident floor for safe haven. Selective evacuation is generally conducted in larger high-rise properties and is regarded the most effective method in protecting the life safety of high-rise building occupants. In very large buildings conducting selective evacuation training several floors at a time, the fire and evacuation drill event may take a full day to complete in order to test fire alarm system design performance and occupant evacuation procedures as approved by the fire department. Most low-rise and mid-rise buildings practicing complete building evacuation should be able to conduct the fire and evacuation drill with test activation of one single fire alarm device. To facilitate an organized, efficient fire and evacuation drill, the facilitator should plan specific actions in a fire and evacuation drill timeline. The emergency response team and tenant fire wardens should be strategically positioned so that they can observe and record life safety system and tenant evacuation performance. The fire and evacuation drill must simulate an actual fire alarm condition, including sounding of the building's evacuation signal. The fire department's approved evacuation plan must also be followed during this exercise. Here is a representative fire and evacuation drill timeline. The life safety team for this particular fire drill planned to convene at 10 a.m. with a pre-fire drill meeting. After reporting to respective monitoring stations, the fire alarm monitoring company will be notified, followed by a public address announcement to building occupants. The timeline identified which fire alarm device would be activated so that fire systems and evacuation could be properly evaluated. During the tenant evacuation, emergency response team and fire wardens observed the occupants' orderly progression from their premises into the emergency stairwell, out of the building, and to respective assembly areas. Recording evacuation time, accounting for occupants, ordering building reoccupancy, and an emergency response team debrief will conclude the fire drill event. The evaluation team is comprised of building emergency response team members, tenant fire wardens, and if available to participate, the fire department. Evaluation and debrief team activities will be directed by the building's life safety director and fire and evacuation drill facilitator. A key component of the fire and evacuation drill event is assessment of fire system functional performance and building tenant response actions. During the fire drill, standardized forms guide evaluators in documenting life safety system performance and tenant evacuation. The life safety director will ensure evaluation forms are distributed to the emergency response team prior to the drill. After the fire and evacuation drill, evaluation forms will be reviewed and input to the life safety director's consolidated summary report. Here is a sample fire and evacuation drill facilitator evaluation form. Documentation includes the specific time the fire and evacuation drill occurred, elapsed time for all occupants to evacuate the facility, life safety system deficiencies, and other factors impacting the tenant evacuation process. The final steps in the fire and evacuation drill process is the documentation phase. Written, recorded documentation of the fire and evacuation drill is required by the local AHJ, city or county fire department, and property owner. Documentation is verification of building owner's compliance with the AHJ's fire safety code requirements. By incorporating standard evaluation forms into the program, quality documentation can be completed within 1 week of the fire and evacuation drill. In summary, the facility manager's organized approach to the fire and evacuation drill under the expert guidance of the AHJ will prepare your tenants in responding promptly and evacuating safely during a fire and other building emergency. On behalf of BuildingsOne, thank you for your interest in this video and your commitment to excellence in the facilities profession.